it's like balancing water with coffee. And I'm only on 4 cups.
I feel like I need to like cut it out for a little while.
Coffee, yeah, that's what I'm feeling, but it tastes so good.
It's hard. Drink decaf.
And I thought, yeah, that's nasty. I thought vitamins would balance it out.
Vitamins?
We are live.
Yeah, the chewables.
Flintstones.
We're moving on.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Brandbeats. My name is Eric.
My name is Andrew. Ooh.
My name is Erwin.
And mine is JoJo.
Amazing. Great introduction.
We did it.
We did it. We got through it. So we don't really have a topic of discussion today. I think we're kind of just going to wing it. But there have been a lot of things going on, both good and bad. You know, I think we're going to talk about it all. So something that has come up, not as recently, but has been a pretty big topic of discussion on the Twitter spheres, on the interwebs, is this idea of NFTs, which are non-fungible tokens. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
That's right.
And essentially just allegedly, yeah. I'm not a master of words or anything, so I can't speak to that, but I think that's how you pronounce it. So non-fungible tokens, these are, and I could be wrong, but I believe they're sort of like one-of-one exclusive like digital art pieces that you can sell for tons of money. And Erwin is here to talk about it and kick us off. So take it away, Erwin.
You literally gave a whole presentation on it.
I have no idea.
Way more than everybody.
I just read off the screen, to be honest. I just read off the
I'm here
slides.
to chime in because I think he brought up some like really good balanced points that I feel like we should touch on about NFTs, because like obviously the Twitter sphere, the Twitter, I don't care. Twitter is all excited about it, especially design Twitter. Is just going ham on NFTs, and then people are obviously selling things for ridiculous amounts of money, and people are investing ridiculous amounts of money in NFT art. Andrew actually brought up one of those as well, so you're definitely gonna have to talk about that. But I think the thing that most impressed me with at least the conversation was how there's these two different sects within the space of the NFT conversation, right? You have all of the people championing in NFT art and NFT as like the way of the future, as the way that gives artists more power and control of their art or control of the digital things that they create because it authenticates. But then we also have a lot of conversation around the environmental catastrophe that NFTs can also create because of the amount of power and electricity that one NFT uses to be made, right? So on one hand, it gives power to the artist, but on the other hand, those same artists who talk about global warming all the time. So the thing that I think was like during our conversation, Andrew, was the most shocking to me was that when presented with capitalism, people have breaking points, right? So no matter how much you are behind this one thing or this one belief, as soon as there's this way to make quick money and immediate money, people sometimes forget their like what they stood on. And I think that that's actually more highlighting, right? So yeah, we can talk about the trend of authentication and how that comes from this long history that we've been seeing and people being able to own their art. But I think there's this deeper conversation that's happening, which is the observation of people who stand by one thing, but then do another when presented with the opportunity to make time move.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a really interesting point, right? Because there's an aspect of hype to what's happening with it right now, clearly, right? Like for somebody to sell artwork at, a $69 million price point that has probably never previously sold artwork at that level. There's maybe never been value to their work put at that tier. Constitutes like there's like some energy around this that's non-rational. And it's like, I think people are jumping in this like not even understanding. They probably don't even understand or haven't even looked into any of the negative aspects. They probably haven't looked into the validity of like, what am I actually even buying, or how does this work, and like, what does this mean for me, and like, why do I give a shit at the end of the day? Versus, there's a lot of energy around this thing. I have to get on board because there's some, it's like I watched Bitcoin blow up and I missed that boat. I don't want to miss this one. And I feel like I'm ready to hit on the ground floor. And then at the same time, it's like, to your point, not even checking like, oh, there's a thing here that maybe infringes on my value system too at the same time. And I don't know what people are going to do when they like wrestle with that on the back end. Although it's like, my cursory sort of understanding of all of this is like, I'm like, I don't know, like there's for sure like an energy or environmental impact to this. And it's like, I'm definitely speaking from like an ignorant place in terms of like what that is, because all I've heard is like, okay, there's an energy cost to this and that affects the environment, but I don't really know what that means, or I haven't dug into like how deep it is. But I think nobody really has. People are just like, I got to buy it now. I got to get it on ground floor to make a profit. And that's the scary part, is like profit over everything in terms of like that like hype culture side of stuff.
Yeah. And I think like on top of that, if we should dig into that as well, or dig into that some more, but on top of that, considering the sort of the digital divide, right? That we saw with the internet in general and access to the internet, right? Where certain communities didn't have access to high-powered internet or didn't have access to internet at all. That meant that those communities couldn't progress as fast or didn't have access to all of this amazing wealth of information, right? That other people had access to. That then widened, or we thought it was shortening when those people started getting access, but then it widened again when you saw the whole new ecosystem and economy that was being built through the world of apps that, again, these people didn't necessarily have access to. And so as soon as we start to catch a group up, then something else brand new is created that then furthers that gap or widens that gap. Because we even talked about people are buying real estate in these digital spaces, right? So people are accumulating massive wealth in these spaces. But in order to do that, you actually have to know about Ethereum. You have to know about Bitcoin. You have to know about cryptocurrencies. You have to own some cryptocurrencies in order to even get in on this market. And so if you don't have access to that, knowledge of that, then it literally just creates a whole, it just increases the divide. So not only does it have like an effect on global warming and all of this stuff, but it also has an effect on the disparity between the haves and the have-nots once again.
That's true. I mean, it's interesting too. It's like, oh, go ahead, Jojo. Sorry.
No, I just said wow.
Oh,
Just listen.
Yeah, I'm just listening.
Well, and it's real world problems playing out on the internet all over again, right? It's like the freedom to frivolously risk your money requires extra income, right? Like to be like, yeah, I could profiteer off of this because this money means nothing to me. And so like real world like advantages are just show up again in another medium, right? Which used to be thought of as like the great democratizer in terms of like access. Like what does access mean if it's all predicated on a system that's like stood up on imbalance in the first place, right? Like if you're just using access point to say like use your money from the real world to get to like hedge bets in the future, it reminds me of like the stock market when algorithms came in and hey, more people have access to like trading stock because of the internet now, and then they realize, oh, actually, like we just going to buy real estate closer and closer to the New York Stock Exchange because the milliseconds in between, it's like, oh, the real world is like widening the divide regardless, like finding their advantage. And it's like, it's interesting you say is like people are buying digital real estate now, but they're still buying it. And it takes, it's never starting from sort of an even playing field.
Yeah. But if you really wanted to look at this space as a great equalizer, then it could be, and somebody put this out there as like as just probably like a thought experiment, right? Which is to say, like, why can't you actually put a cap on the money that you make, or a cap on who can buy certain things, right? So if these things are going to accumulate or kind of increase in how much they're worth over time, couldn't that then be a way to actually then spread out wealth over time and not take money from taxes, et cetera, right? So then you could basically say like households that make under this can have access to these NFT pieces of art that will be worth X amount down the line. So it actually creates investment opportunities for lower income families and access to wealth over time. So there was like these interesting ideas on how NFT art and NFT whatever's can be utilized to then create wealth and opportunities to wealth or access to wealth for communities, but that's not gonna happen.
Well, and I think these are all good points. But I would say on the part of the buyers, right? Like the sort of consumers of NFT art or whatever. But I think on the side of the actual creators of NFTs, I think it's a pretty monumental breakthrough because myself as a creative or artist or whatever you want to call me, it's like I could finally protect my work. Yeah. And you think about, I think his name's like Doggo Face or whatever, the dude that was on the longboard with the cranberry juice, like skating down the street. That dude just made that video into an NFT. So now he can monetize the shit out of that and get, the money that he's owed essentially because, I think it was Ocean Breeze or whatever, Ocean Splash. I don't know what the brand is called, but the cranberry juice brand made a ton of money just because of him and got a ton of exposure. And I honestly haven't heard of them since like the 90s. So like this guy, like he's finally getting his money. And I think that's like to me, a huge benefit to NFTs. So pros and cons.
Yeah, sure. And it feels like that's like with every great innovation, right? Every great step forward, there's obviously going to be these like other tension points. I feel like it'll be beautiful if at one point we had these great innovations, if it considered both sides, as opposed to always considering one side, which is there is a benefit, obviously. There was a benefit to Facebook. There was a benefit to all of these social platforms that ended up decaying our society at certain points. And then there wasn't that consideration of the other side.
I think you're right. And I think like from an artistry standpoint, the internet has been a place like ripe with sort of rip off, right? Like you've seen it in like meme culture is a good example. I think the real power of NFTs is actually less about owning something because you kind of don't own it. Anybody can still view it or replicate it. Like maybe you own the rights to it. I think it's more about attribution to the creator. Like that's where I see the power in is like meme culture, right? Which is you look at whatever famous Instagram accounts you follow, basically just trolling Reddit and stealing people's jokes and then reposting them and curating and then profiteering off of it. Whereas in a world where NFTs do it, when you originate content, there's a certificate of authenticity that's attached to it. And that means like you as a creator can always be tied to the original piece of art. And so it's less to me about ownership. Like when I think of this, I'm like, maybe it will be. I guess I don't know. I haven't thought deeply enough about it, but more about like it's a creative unlock because of authenticity in like, creating something new that can come back to you. Because I don't know what it means to own something digital that can be replicated in perfection, and viewed infinitely without any sort of like, there's no way to stop people from copying things, but there is a way to tie the creative content that you output to your name. And that's like a beautiful thing, because then it's like the people who are making funny jokes one day can mint their ideas and maybe get reached out to for somebody to say, hey, let me commercialize your talent versus doing the other thing, which is stealing it and then profiting off of it.
It's almost like the 21st century version of like a patent, even though patents are still a thing, it's like this is becoming more widespread,
Right.
Jojo, did you have something to say? Looks like you're getting primed.
No, nope. This is all good.
Cool. Yeah, well, I mean, circling back to what Andrew just said, like on the topic of attribution and kind of ownership-esque sort of things, not really NFTs, but there was this debate, I think like a couple months ago or so, about like Fortnite dances and how those came from like Black creators, but they never got credit for it. Like I
Yeah.
think it's called like the Floss or something, and whatever the other ones are called, like Orange Justice, I believe. Like these were getting like sold, like these dances are actually, I believe, sold on Fortnite, like per dance for, I don't know, a ton of money, but the creators never get a lick of that. And it's like now they can finally, I don't even know if that's possible with NFTs, but I think that attribution is finally there for them.
Your NFT, your dance moves.
I mean, you probably could somehow. I don't know.
I think maybe it even like hopefully sparks a deeper conversation around that. Right, which is just general attribution. So you don't necessarily have to just exist within the NFT space, because dance moves can't really exist in the NFT space because they can be replicated, and the way they get popular is by being replicated, right? So the creator wants them, right? So you can't charge every single person for doing that dance move. That would be tiring as fuck. But then when a brand uses it, how do you give them the capacity to actually access that dancer and then pay that dancer? So there is something interesting to the idea of being able to like trademark or patent these things that traditionally weren't patentable or trademarkable, right? Or giving access to trademarking, access to patent.
That's what it is. Yeah, access is the biggest thing, I think.
If this sparks a conversation around that, that's what I'm excited about, as opposed to just the NFT itself. Because that only exists within the digital creation space. There's a lot of creation that happens outside of the digital space, i.e. chefs who come up with recipes or whatever, like all of these things. How do you begin to actually give them attribution and pay all of these individuals for the work that they put in? Because again, like I think like with the dance moves, there's a lot of creation that starts within these communities or marginalized communities that can't be translated into digital until somebody like Fortnite translates it into digital. But now Fortnite can create an NFT and Fortnite can begin to make money on their dance move, but they still don't have to attribute or pay the main dancer. So it's like digital ends up allowing people to still not pay the true creator.
Yeah.
But to me, I hope it like sparks that deeper conversation around, we need to pay musicians more. We need to pay these people more. We need to pay X, Y, and Z for the work that they're actually putting in to build the brands that we love and admire.
Yeah. It's an odd thing, right? Because in a digital world, like in a physical world where things are finite, like static things we assign value to. But in a digital world, like things that are static can be replicated infinitely. Like, so they don't have like they don't have the same value that we would attribute to it in the real world. And we're trying to sort of apply a real world value model to content that doesn't exist in that way, and use it and leverage in the same way. And that's why I feel like it feels awkward to us when we're like, what does it mean to own an NBA card that's a moment in history when anybody else can view it? Like, what does that even mean? It's not an original Van Gogh that I could put on my wall. There's only one of, and nobody can make another one of this thing. That's the part that's like trippy to me. Like, I don't know. Like, that's why I'm like the power of it is more about attribution or minting things that are conceptual or non-static than the idea of like the person who made it or the creator who made it, or maybe an algorithm, something that evolves over time that can't be replicated, because that is like, that to me is like where ownership could happen in a digital space. But it's odd to me, the way it's being applied is interesting and maybe not wrong, but confusing as fuck.
Yeah.
Like what is,
because I like, so was it Jake Paul or Logan Paul? One of the Pauls. They created like a Pokemon style card and then made $5 million from like their Pokemon cards.
What?
Like an illustration of himself. And then I searched it on Instagram, or I searched it on like, because I wanted to see what this card was. I looked it up and it's on Google Images. I could just right click and download it. And so it is like, it's weird.
It is weird.
It's weird that he was able to make $5 million on something that I could just click and download.
Also, who would pay for that $5 million for Logan Paul's face. No.
Yeah, and I think it's like it might be like one Ethereum each, but then that's $1,000 each.
Right.
And I think that's what we were talking about is like, again, when you consider who's in the space with all of this Ethereum or all of these Bitcoins, people put money in there just sitting on it, right? So they're not living off of their Bitcoin money. They're not living off of their Ethereum money. It's just sort of like extra money for some people. And so Bitcoin is one Bitcoin to them. Now, it's not like $1,000.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Because like, I mean, that's the interesting thing about like NFT because it effectively turns anything on your computer into a Bitcoin, so to speak. Like now this thing has an inherent market value because but again, it's not the thing, it's just attached to it's attached to the Beeple thing. It's the line of code that is, it's the token itself that's valuable, not the art. That's the weird part to me is like, is Beeple's art
It's people.
like that valued at that, or is it the token that's attached to the art that's valuable?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's such a weird thing.
We talked about that too. It's like it's similar to like Dada art, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the urinal as a piece of art that was
Right.
served to question what is art. Is it about the creator or is it about the actual piece? So this, if you were to almost look at it as like a new piece of art, NFT in general, it's an experience that then questions what we value as a society.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Value the thing, the physicality, which is what you have within the space of like streetwear and sneakers and all that stuff. It's like you get something physical, so obviously is why you're buying it. This is like digging into that. It's almost like if this was like a research project by Harvard that was going to play out over a certain period of time, like this is smart because it's just digging into like what truly drives consumption, what truly drives desire. Why do people really buy things or like associate a certain level of monetary value to this versus that?
That's wild.
Because it's like the cyber, what is it? The bitpunks, cyberpunks.
What?
There's some
Video game?
huh?
The video game?
Oh, CryptoPunks.
Crypto.
They're literally like, if you search CryptoPunks, there's a bunch of just like little like avatars that are all like eight pixel designs, but then those sell for a lot of money because they're representative of the time to some people. And people are like, I watched some video and there's people that are like spending millions of dollars on these individual things, not because they like those, but they're treating them like investments. Right. So this person was like, which one of these is going to stand the test of time? It's going to be the character that has the VR glasses. And even if VR isn't going to be as popular in the future, it's the idea of VR. So they're looking at it like they're buying pieces of art, which is like, how is this a sign of the times? How is this going to increase in value over time? What does it mean now versus then? And they're investing millions of dollars into each one of these pieces as if it's going to increase in value over time.
This is giving me real Beanie Baby vibes. Just saying.
Oh, the NFT.
Honestly, this is kind of what it is.
The NFT crash. Ooh, people are gonna be just sitting on millions of dollars and just shit on their computer.
Here's an honest question because like we apply like something we do with art today, which is art. The originals have a value, but we also assign value to replications of art sometimes. So you mint a replication of the same piece of artwork that was minted already?
Oh, you're saying like, can I just download somebody's thing and then just mint it?
Can I mint another thing? Yeah, like can I duplicate it?
Because it's different. It's not the same piece of art.
Yeah, it's
my God.
copy one.
Because I downloaded it. Yeah, I downloaded it from a different source. It was created and designed by somebody. They minted it. Now I'm downloading it, which is a whole different process.
Yeah, like, and we do that in the reason I'm asking is because we do it in the real world, right? Like we do replications of prints like at large size, and then we go, oh no, this one's at $400, even though it's a $20,000 original, whatever.
Yeah, all my talk of the sort of environmental issues. Now I'm about to go download that card from Logan.
Oh my
Just
god.
put like some handwriting, like
Mint number 2. Like I want mint number 2.
It's gonna be like, who's gonna be the Banksy of
Yeah.
NFT?
Understand.
Wow.
Irwin.
See your next side venture, Erwin, is just becoming a street NFT artist.
Yep.
That's the crazy part. It's the whole sort of like attributing value to something you don't even understand. I don't think anybody really understands what it even is yet, and that willingness to spend millions of dollars on that, you know. And maybe that's the same with what Bitcoin was, but that's wild.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like, this is the card.
Stop it.
that's
What?
beautiful.
I cannot believe.
That made $5 million.
Oh my god. What am I doing with my life?
Oh, no. I'm doing
That's
it
not
wrong.
even. It's not even a great drawing, to be honest.
Yeah, that's
I know.
that's what was like that's the part that had me shook. It was just kind of like, it's not necessarily people buying it from
Yeah.
the beauty of the art. It is kind of like
They're buying it for the novelty.
people are buying it for the novelty, and people have that sort of money to toss around within this space, to toss around that novelty.
Wow.
It is like
So
a
does
beauty.
it create like a whole different, like, it does get to this deeper heart of the conversation, which is like, again, what is art?
Mhm.
Does it
Mm,
to truly value what true art is supposed to be or can do, a space for empathy and conversation, and make art about the profit even more, which is what Warhol is talking about, right? Like, is that space? Is this that space and this that time when all art just becomes purely profit? All right.
Oh, shit. I just like left more confused than we began. I feel like you guys just mind fucked me.
should we pivot the conversation? I know we gotta hop off in a little bit. Should we get into topic number 2?
Let's pivot this conversation.
Yeah.
All right.
I want to get heavy.
Yeah, we're getting heavy. We're getting heavy with it.
Well,
So yeah, NFTs that was kind of like the appetizer, but now we're just diving in. So as you may or may not know, if you're watching, there were like a string of assaults, attacks, murders against Asian Americans in this country, and really starting a year ago when the whole COVID-19 thing happened. So from then till now, and I think there's kind of been a surge recently. There have just been a bunch of attacks up until I think 2 days ago or something, in Atlanta, and I want to say there were like 6 Asian American women that were killed. So a big problem. And obviously the protest happened, at a pretty grand scale last summer for Black Lives Matter. And since then, nothing's really changed for anyone in this country that is a minority. So I think the topic of conversation is just, what the fuck is going on in this country? And what can we do? And all of us here are minorities, are people of color. So I think, yeah, just very, very heavy week, I think, for all of us.
Yeah.
fuck. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you said it. I feel like
I'm like,
it's
Sorry,
hard
go
to, I think it's hard to, one, talk about and talk through, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just because it's not new, right? So just like everything that happened with BLM, it's not new. Like,
Yeah.
there's even things, when we look throughout the history of America, there's acts, there's bills very similar to the Black codes that existed for Asian people, right? And then it just goes to show that this obviously is a systemic thing that exists amongst POC, and we've been basically placed into these buckets and silos that says this is who you should be and this is who you can be in America. And that created the mono minority myth, which then placed Asians also against Blacks and Blacks against Asians. But it was all systems created that then function to continuously separate, divide us. And it's like, in speaking to some of my friends who are women, it hit extra deep because one, we just had the not incidents, but the tragedies that happened over the past couple of weeks, right? Not only within the Asian community, but just in general, to women. And so it's two fronts, which is the hypersexualization of Asian women, and then also just the attack on the Asian community. So it was just, again, I can't speak from experience, but it's something that we should all be standing for, something that we should all be listening to, something that we should all be tuned into. And I know, like, in my social feed, that's all I'm seeing, but that's just because that's who I follow, right?
Yeah.
Again, I don't have anything to add other than one, I stand with the Asian community, and my heart goes out to the families and everybody who is the entire Asian community.
Erwin, I mean, that's a really good point. I think like something you and I were just talking about on another call before this was a topic of like the Rainbow Coalition, as started by Fred Hampton in the 60s. If you haven't seen the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, really fucking incredible movie. But I think in our country, no matter what era we've seen, it's like real progress and real change has always been done by just a coalition of different people coming together for a common purpose, across racial divides or whatever. So I think this is just one of those things. And whether it's, these attacks on Asian Americans or, the murders of innocent Black people in the streets or whatever, it's like, I think significant change has always been done by us coming together and protesting in the streets or whatever it is. But I think it's all just about solidarity.
Yeah, it's like while our stories might be different, right? Our upbringings might be different. We come from different communities, etc. The enemy and the antagonist is the same.
Yep.
And if from that, that's because even like obviously there were like instances at the start of this that we saw other people from also minority groups attacking Asians, and that again serves to divide, but not realizing that what's actually playing out there is something that's been systemically placed in someone's mind.
100%.
Right? It's not just the exterior of the person attacking, but it's the mentality that's been created because of a system that has shown us content, media, all of these things that basically, again, have placed us into these different boxes. Right. So because it takes place within the realm in the Black community, you have a lot of like athletics programs and all that stuff, which encourage us to go down this one funnel. Within the Asian community, you have extra school programs, which encourage you guys to go down another funnel. So like creating these two different silos, and then media at the top reinforces that within our own communities, but then also to the external communities, it shows a one-dimensional picture of who those communities are. Like all Black people can dance, all Black people can play sports, all of those things are things that have been created by media. All Asians are smart, all Asians are this way, are things that have been created by media, and not media that we created. But over time, we even begin to take on and believe those ideas about other groups and about ourselves. Right? It's shaped how we see ourselves currently, and then how we grow up and see ourselves in the future. And to me, it's like, when we say it's fighting systemic racism or white supremacy or patriarchal masculinity, that's what we're truly fighting against. And I think that stuff is stuff that exists in our mind that we need to extract, dismantle through empathy, love, education. And
I mean, I feel like I couldn't agree more. Like everything you're speaking to like reminds me of, it's just the danger of a single story. Like it's the oversimplification of putting people into a box and then allowing that to be the narrative you go through life with, right? Like the thing I struggle with, right, is like JoJo's response to it is like the same way I felt, when everything happened last year, where you're just like, fuck, like, I don't even know what to do Like,
Yeah.
Christ almighty, like, what else do you have to say or do? Or like, how much more evidence has to be out there in front of people for people to like get
Yeah.
it, you know? And I like, sometimes I feel like that, like, and I try, you got to fight apathy to the utmost, because you don't want to be there, but it's like fighting ignorance is a tall task. And I'm like, shit, maybe you have to pull out all stops, because I find that like ignorance is, to your point, Erwin, it's like an oversimplification of a culture, a people, a race, religion, or whatever it may be, so that you think you can organize them into some neat little box for yourself and then run your life accordingly. I'm like, shit, maybe we just need mandatory exposure. Like, you turn 16, your ass is going on a pilgrimage in culturally. Like, you need to meet more. Like, I don't know, but like, to me, I feel like so much of ignorance is about lack of exposure. Like, you're ignorant, or you're scared. You think you know what something means when you've never experienced or been a part of it, or embraced it in the first place. And that's where these things come out of.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I actually think the weight, because when you do things intentionally like that, I feel like it will work, but only to a certain extent. I think the weight exists on the subtle media that we all consume passively. So, and I've talked about this many times, and in Eric's message, he talked about it on Instagram, which is like the Breakfast at Tiffany's reference of Asian people created a lasting picture of how people made fun of Asian people moving forward. So that one thing, right? Or Birth of a Nation created a lasting picture of the Black man as the criminal from media. It wasn't from just the outward racism that we're obviously all terrified by, but media, and how media subtly infects and impacts our brain and twists our thoughts and shapes our perception. Because in general, we all know this within digital space, we all know about heuristics and patterns being how we sort of navigate society and human beings having to function on patterns for survival. Media plays into that. It creates a new pattern for you to then move through your world with, so you can move through your world in a more seamless fashion. So we need to be those who are actively creating new media, creating new tropes, creating new things that help us then shape the perception of the world around us. Then that's what's going to change action. Action isn't going to change just by like us doing super overt things. Like, that's going to bring awareness and attention, but action is going to change by media subtly beginning to shift and tell more holistic narratives, right? So it's like, from an Asian perspective, you can't just have Crazy Rich Asians. Yeah, it's an amazing win, but you can't just have that and Bling Empire, because those actually reinforce the idea of the model minority.
100%.
Yeah,
the holistic narrative, which is actually why like Parasite was actually, to me, stronger, because it actually showed this diversity of the community, right? And every community has a spectrum, but the only communities that get their spectrum recognized, that they don't even have to recognize the spectrum, is like the white community, right? And so to me, that's one of the most important things that we need to begin to do and see now, is more people recognizing that from a brand standpoint, coming out with commercials and advertising that actually references that beautiful spectrum. And that's something I've talked about, like with Nike. I love Nike, but if you only look at their ads, you're gonna be like, yo, Black people can dunk. Black people are really good at sports. And so if you're outside of the community, that's what you're gonna see. If you're in the community, what you'll end up thinking is that the only way I can get out of here is if I play sports. And so you have drugs, sports, and rap. That's the only way I can get out of here. If I'm great at science or great at other things, it's like I'm an outlier, because nobody's showing me that that is a way out. Yeah. Whereas in the Asian community, what they're seeing is like a way out or a way up is doctor, all of these like career paths, right? Because that's what the media is showing you. And so how do we basically paint a more diverse set of characters for people to aspire to, both internally and externally, for those communities?
I don't think that changes the narrative of what's going on, though. Like, to me, like, it's the caucasity. Like, we can create whatever we want to internally for us, by us, whatever, but it's these white supremacists with the goal to do what they're doing and then being justified for it. Just like what happened, he was like, oh, he had a bad day and went in and shot up some women. Like, we can't change that narrative just by having internal conversations. We can't change that narrative from Black supporting Asians. I'm like, for me, is where I'm frustrated is like, I am doing shit that's for my community, but my community is still being killed. You know what I mean? And it's like, there was even an article of like how Black people can support Asians. Like, we're doing that. You know what I mean? We're doing that. We're doing that work on top of the work that we're doing for ourselves. And it needs to be more of an effort from the majority. It can't just be us, and we can't just keep letting them go past because, oh, they look wholesome, or oh, they had a bad day, or oh, they came from a Christian family and they were triggered. Like, I'm watching this show called Amend. I was talking to this about with Erwin. I get pissed off every episode. I have to take day breaks. Like, it literally starts from the beginning of just white people just running shit and trying to control shit, whether it is Black people, whether it is like the white body, whatever it's like the LGBTQ plus community, whether it is like any other BIPOC community. They're intimidated by us, and they want to keep us like a noose around our neck at whatever cost. So for me, it's like, how do we, it's no longer like, how can I loosen up my own noose? It's literally like, how do they come together and like literally shut this shit down? Once that like police officer was like on that, somebody should have got up there, grabbed the camera and like, nah, fuck you. You're wrong. Like, this is some dumbass shit. Like, someone should have said something, but yet like that's what got spread across the media. And even though I'm affected, all the white people are like, yeah, like he just had a bad day. It's all good. Let me go kill this other person. You know what I mean? Like, it's extremely frustrating because it's not much that we can do that hasn't been said or done. I don't know how many more of us have to die for the cause until like the cause just like is like we need to change it. I don't know. I'm just saying it's mad frustrating.
That part was ridiculous when he said that.
Like, what? Nobody was like.
And I was in the Asian professional room yesterday on like Clubhouse. And then there was people like saying like, yeah, we knew what happened. We knew that it was like within Asian communities, but all of the media during the evening was literally saying that it was like just a massage parlor, or people were actually acknowledging the reality of what happened. And then even people that I know who don't live in the US, when they saw it, they saw those news headlines and they're like, oh yeah, maybe he was like a sex addict or having a bad day. Because they don't want to understand like the nature of systemic racism and all that stuff that happens here. But it was still just like, that's what the media is putting out. It's weird that The Onion is the only one who had it right. Like a fake news site is the only one who like called it.
The craziest story I heard was that like it was a sex parlor and they probably said that this white man's dick was small and he got upset and shot them. And I'm like, is that an excuse?
No, I think and maybe it's like I can read through that story or that narrative. Even if it was based on him having a sex addiction, right? The fact that he chose a massage parlor that had predominantly Asian people in it is the racist part.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we had to listen to him, or the fact that they listened to him and asked him, was it racially driven? That's stupid. You can't ask him.
Like, I'm gonna tell you what you tell him. You tell him like, no, that was racially driven. That's the part is like, where's the resistance from that? Like, why? Like, you would think a community would say like, that's wrong, and let me tell you why, and reject it. And you're like, why the fuck are you? What is your motivation behind resisting the truth, this obvious truth in this narrative?
Yeah, I think maybe that's like what Jojo was saying is like, we do all of this stuff because we can create these things that help shape the narrative in a more like diverse way, but there's always going to be this reaction from this group who continuously tries to narrow it. And that's the tension that we're existing in right now. It's like there is this group who's continuously trying to be like, no, he's not racist. He just had a bad day.
Let's hear him out for a little bit.
Yeah,
it's like, we always try to empathize with the killers, with the terrorists, but never empathize with the victims. Like, he had a fucking bad day. What about their families? People who died, you know, it's like.
And honestly, if you think about when, so that same thing happened here, right? And I forgot when, and I don't know all the details, so somebody please look it up because I'm probably going to butcher the story. But the moral is there was a brown person who went into, I think, a hair salon and killed another brown person, and then immediately, and they knew each other, and immediately they got called a terrorist, right? So that was looked at as a terrorist action. But this, again, didn't get called that. And it's not like that person could have just been like, yo, I'm not a terrorist. But they weren't, they weren't going to wait to listen to what that person had to say. They were going to wait to say that, oh, it was a domestic dispute and I was upset with my significant other. They're going to immediately say that's a terrorist. Everybody needs to watch out because this person's going on a killing rampage.
And it's crazy because you have this narrative where this guy comes in and shoots and kills all these women, and then you have the story of this old Asian woman who beat the shit out of this white man for running up on her. And just like the media was still like a little, like, to me, it still felt a little off on the way that they portrayed her. You know what I mean? Like, to me, she was a hero. But like, you see this with white man, like all like this, you know, carried away in a stretcher. And I'm like, why is he in a stretcher? Throw his ass in the back of the fucking police truck like you would have done us 100%. Or any other person of color. You know what I mean?
I didn't even see all that. I didn't see any of how the media. All I saw was like the video from the person who filmed it. So I have like some of the context of whatever, but that is true. Like they
made this woman look over exaggerated, super like, you know what I mean? Like dramatic or whatever. And like, again, the camera flashes over to this white man and he looks like, everyone's all empathetic to him. And then this white woman comes up to her and just like, yo, calm down. Like, what does she need to calm? Like, she just been attacked and defended herself.
And also, why isn't she in a stretcher? She's an elderly lady. Like, she just survived an attack. She probably has some sort of trauma. Like, what the fuck, you know?
Hello?
Yeah. Do not get it. It's a double standard in this country, really. I don't know. It's always been that way.
Yes. I'd say we need to do a better job of protecting women, protecting people of color, but also protecting women of color, because that is a whole category of itself.
100%.
Yes.
Agreed. And I also support a lot of like what you were saying too, Erwin, like, because Jojo, you're right. Like, what, you know, creating our own tropes or like re-educating and like representing the spectrum of like the reality of our culture isn't going to solve what's going on right now, but it is a necessary step, I think, too, in terms of like exposing people to the realities of those cultures. Because the reality is like we live in a culture that's like, especially in America, I mean, specifically in America, that likes to predicate itself of being a melting pot. But reality is like, there's only one spectrum of culture in this country that is like widely known, and everything else is a bit of a trope of their culture as it exists inside of American society. It's like, it's the Judeo-Christian American society plus African American, and everybody has an idea of what African American, of Asian American, everybody has an idea of what Asian American is, and it's some shortcut that they don't really understand, and it's an oversimplification. So it is incredibly important to do what you're talking about too, Erwin, to share those other depictions of the nuance of those cultures.
To that though, like, it also takes the uplifting, of people with money, opportunity, wealth to continue these narratives of going, just like Issa Rae's show. Like, if HBO didn't be like, here, like, we fuck with you, we would have never really known of Issa Rae. So again, it's just like, we can continue to create this content in the background, but we do need the support of the people who can lift us up, invest in us, give us that money, and for them just to shut the fuck up and let us like tell our own stories.
Oh yeah, I think that's what I mean by media. I don't think I mean just us creating little videos. Like, media that's impactful is media that we see every day in a passive way. So like, even seeing like other characters like a Winston on New Girl is a very subtle way of showing a more diverse cast of characters of Blackness. Even if you don't like Winston, it's like being able to see these other representations in the real space of real media, because every single person consumes it, which then helps create a more diverse narrative, not only for like the community itself, but for people outside of the community. And then we need the on the ground action of like really, really fighting. Because that's what I'm saying. Like, to me, those two things are what's needed side by side in order to create that real sort of lasting change. Because with systemic racism, you have both like the really overt racists, but but then you have the media that created the stereotypes that allowed those races to then move freely and actually hang and kill Black people, right?
Yeah.
If without the media, without Birth of a Nation, I feel like people would have been more empathetic. People wouldn't have been okay with like all like the Black people getting killed all the time. It was like with that and the rise of the KKK at the same time, that then completely removed all of the progress that there could have been, or any type of unity, or any type of like Black people in sort of like political power that there could have been at the very foundation. It was like those two things, the shittiest campaign ever created.
Yeah. I have to leave, but I mean, I couldn't agree more. I'm gonna let you guys solve this problem. I expect notes about our actions. When I come back in the morning.
JoJo's running for president.
No, I'm not.
we have the Bitch Better Have My Money party.
Okay.
Rihanna is going to be our spokesperson, as
Rent's too
well
damn
as
expensive.
she's going to be VP, in case you didn't know, and on the logo.
I'll be the real money bag Joe. I got y'all. All right. Well, I think we can actually just like close up, right?
Yeah. I think we'll just wrap it down.
I think we're good here.
It's been a very productive discussion.
JoJo for president.
No, everyone would just get cussed out every day. So I'm good.
That's what we need.
I guess so, actually.
All right, y'all. Well, till next time. Peace.
All right.